Welcome back, learners. I am Dr. Shantanu Saurabh, Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce, DAV PG College, Banaras Hindu University. I welcome you to our course based on the theme Rudimentary Principles and Practices of Managerial Economics. In the last section, I provided you a brief gist of pricing policy. In this module 7, lecture number 32, we'll be covering two important dimensions of pricing policy, that is factors affecting pricing policy and the process of price determination. These two are very important topics, and in this session we'll be trying to cover these two topics. So first of all, factors affecting pricing policy. Factors are the most important components which have a direct impact on the pricing policy. So one by one I'll be discussing all the factors which affect the pricing policy. As you're able to see on the screen, there are 7 factors. First is alignment with firm's objective, assessment of competitive situation, understanding price sensitivity, harmonizing product and promotional policies, managing manufacturer middleman conflict, influence of non-business groups on pricing, and routine and standardization of pricing. So I'll be going deep into it, but in the first slide I'll be just providing you a gist of the factors. The first is alignment with firm's objective. While deciding the price of any product, you should be having a brief idea about the objectives of the firm, and the pricing and the objective should be in the same line. If they are not on the same line, it could create a problem for the firm. So the pricing should be aligned with the firm's objective. The second is there should be proper assessment of competitive situations, which means a proper assessment of competitors' situation should be done so that pricing can be done in an adequate manner which could generate right revenue for the firm, and the firm can grow in a positive way. The third is price sensitivity. Even the price sensitivity plays a very relevant role that needs to be understood, and in accordance to it, the price needs to be decided by the respective firm. The fourth is harmonizing product and promotional policies, which means while deciding the price of the product, the promotional policies and features of the product should be considered, and in line with that, the pricing of the product should be done. If it is not done in line with that, it could create a nuisance or problem for the firm. Next is managing manufacturer middleman conflicts, which means the pricing should be done in such a manner that there is no dispute between the middleman, manufacturer and other parties involved. There should be transparency in the process, and the pricing should be done in adequate manner. The next is influence on non-business groups on pricing, which means the people who are not directly related to business groups, but those groups which have relevance in business. So we need to consider those groups also, which are termed as non-business groups. Pricing has effect on non-business group. And last is routine and standardization of pricing. Pricing is such a concept which is reoccurring in nature. At different points of time, you need to reset or refix the price. So price should be routine and standard according to the movement of the market. So one by one, we will be discussing all these 7 points. Factors affecting price policy. Formulating a price policy entails navigating a complex interplay of factors. There are different factors which affect pricing that directly affect the firm's objectives. Competitive positioning. Positioning means the image of the product in the mind of the consumers. Consumer behavior, which plays a very relevant role, and market dynamics, as the market keeps on changing. So you need to understand the market dynamics. Let's delve into these considerations under the following headings. The first one being alignment with firm's objective. Ensure that pricing strategies are closely aligned or are in line with the overarching objectives of the firm, which means the pricing strategy should be framed in such a way that it goes in the same line with the objectives of the firm. It should not be the case that the objectives are different and the pricing strategy is different. That could create a problem for the firm. So both the objectives and the pricing should be moving in the similar direction. Whether the objective can be of maximizing market share, increasing profitability, enhancing brand equity, or any other objective. When you are deciding the price, it should move with the objectives of the firm. Pricing decisions should support the firm's long-term vision and strategic goals, which means whenever you are deciding the prices, it should move with the long-term objectives, vision of the firm, as well as the strategic goals, guiding all pricing initiatives towards achieving sustainable goal, which means the firm can move in the right direction for a longer duration of time. And competitive advantage. Competitive advantage here means that you are able to compete with the competitors and have a upper edge in the market, so that your pricing policy is sound enough, is adequate enough to fight with the competitors and to have a good command on the market. So first point was alignment with firm objective, which means your pricing strategy should be on the same line, should be on the same concept as your objectives you have framed. The second point is assessment of competitive situation. Conduct a thorough analysis of competitive landscape to understand the firm's position relative to the competitors, which means you need to have a good assessment of competitive situations or the competitors which are existing in the market. Identify competitive strength and weakness you need to understand to inform pricing strategies. You need to understand strength and weakness of your firm, as well as you need to understand the strength and weakness of other firms and frame strategies accordingly. To inform pricing strategies such as pricing power, product differentiation, market share dynamics, which means if you are having good understanding of yourself as well as the competitors, you could work on the topics such as pricing power, product differentiation, and market share dynamics. You can have a good share in the market in which you are dealing. Adopt pricing tactics based on competitors' action, which means your pricing tactics should be focused on the competitors' movement and action and market response to maintain or improve the firm's competitive position, which means there should be response from the firm side to improve its position and sustain in the market for a longer duration and generate good amount of revenue. So in the second point, the assessment of competitive situation, you need to have a good understanding of yourself as well as the competitor, so that you can do good work in the field of pricing and generate good amount of profit. The next point is understanding price sensitivity. Gauge the degree of price sensitivity among target consumers to determine the optimal pricing strategy. That you need to determine or understand the optimal pricing strategy. Conduct market research. This is very relevant. When you are conducting market research, you are able to understand the market and the problems and the good points of the market, and analyze to assess consumers' willingness to pay. That you are able to understand the willingness of consumers, price elasticity of demand, and sensitivity to pricing changes, which means price sensitivity is a very important factor on which the price is based. Tailor pricing strategies to accommodate varying level of price sensitivity across different customer segments or market segments, which means price sensitivity also plays a very relevant or important role in the pricing decision. The next is harmonizing product and promotional policies, which means whenever you are doing the pricing process, you should be considering the promotional policies being adopted by the firm as well as the features of the product. Ensure coherence between product, pricing and promotional strategies to avoid conflicts and inconsistencies, which means whenever you are doing the pricing policy, whenever you are deciding the price, you should be considering the strategies being adopted, promotional strategies being adopted by the firm, as well as the features of the product, so that both can go in the same direction. Coordinate pricing decisions with promotional activities to maximize effectiveness and minimize erosion of brand value, which means your pricing should be such in nature that it goes in the line with promotional activities, so that maximum effectiveness can be gained and the brand could result in a positive way. Align pricing with product positioning, which means your pricing should be such a nature that it results into product positioning and brand messaging to create a cohesive customer experience or a positive customer experience across all the touch points, which means across all the segments. So your pricing policy should be such a nature that it falls on the line with the promotional policies being adopted by the firm. The next is managing manufacturer middlemen conflicts. Address potential conflicts of interest between manufacturers and intermediaries, that is middlemen, in the distribution channel, which means the manufacturer and the middleman conflicts should be taken care of. There should be transparency in the pricing process. Balance the need and objectives of manufacturers with those of middlemen. These two people, the manufacturers and the middlemen, are very important people who transfer the goods from the production place to the customer or the other entities. So you need to have a balance between the manufacturers and the middlemen to foster mutual beneficial relationship. That means there should be sound or effective relationship between the manufacturer and middlemen. Implement transparent pricing policies, which means there should be transparency in the pricing policy, and communication channels to mitigate conflicts, which means to eliminate conflict and build trust among channel partners, which means there should be transparency between the manufacturer and the middleman, and trust should be developed so that they can contribute in a positive way to the firm. So managing manufacturer and middleman conflict is also an important factor while considering the pricing policy. The next point is influence of non-business group on pricing. Non-business group means which are not directly involved in the business process. Recognize the impact of non-business entities such as regulatory bodies, industry associations, or consumer advocacy groups on pricing decisions, which means you need to take care of the non-business groups, as these groups also have a indirect impact on the pricing policy. Stay informed about regulatory changes or the major changes being made in the industry standards. You should be aware of it. And social trend or the change in the market that may influence the pricing strategy, which means you need to understand the non-business group and you need to be upgraded with the knowledge of these non-business groups. Engage with relevant stakeholders or the parties who are involved in the business and adopt pricing strategies to comply with legal requirements and address social concerns, which means you need to be connected with the non-business group, you need to understand the legal requirements of the society and also address the social issues of the society. So this is one of the most important component in which we have covered the non-business groups, their impact. So the firm needs to understand their impact, their policies, and according to the non-business group, they need to have a pricing policy which works in the favor for the firm. Moving to the next point, that is routine and standardization of pricing. Evaluate the benefits and drawbacks of routine pricing decisions, which means in regular interval of time, you need to frame routine pricing decisions. You need to take pricing decisions on regular intervals. And standardizing pricing practices, which means your pricing practice should be a standard one. Consider factors such as pricing consistency, operational efficiency, and customer perception while implementing pricing routines, which means these factors should be considered regularly while revising the prices according to the requirement of the market. Balance the need for consistency with flexibility to adjust price in response to changing market conditions, which means consistency with flexibility should be in accordance with the change in the market or strategic objectives. By addressing these key considerations in the formulation of price policy, firms can develop robust or good pricing strategies that drive or result into profitability for the firm, enhance competitiveness, and foster long-term success in dynamic market movements, which means if the firm is adopting to all these factors, it could result into profit for the firm, enhance competitiveness, or a positive side for the as compared to the competitors, and long-term success could be attained in the changing environment. So as you have seen in the factors, we have discussed alignment with firm's objective, assessment of competitive situation, understanding price sensitivity, harmonizing product and promotional policies, managing manufacturer middleman conflicts, influence of non-business groups on pricing, and then finally we discussed routine and standardization of pricing. So all these factors have direct or indirect impact on the pricing of the product. Moving forward, now we'll be talking about the next topic, which is related to process of price determination. As you are able to see on the screen, these are the different steps. The first step is demand forecasting of the product. The second is evaluating the competition in the market, assessment of expected market share, selection of appropriate price objective. Next is distribution policy and selection of the price. I'll be explaining you all these points one by one, but in this slide I'll just be giving you a brief idea of all these steps. The first step is regarding demand forecasting of the product. For example, if you are talking about firm related to which is producing pen. So first step that firm will be doing, it will be trying to forecast the demand for that specific pen. Based on the different techniques which we have discussed in the previous lectures, it will be trying to forecast the demand for that specific pen. The next step it will be doing will be that it will be evaluating the competition in the market, the different companies or brands which are dealing in pen. So it will be evaluating the competitors which are already existing in the market. The third step it will be taking will be assessment of expected market share. It will be trying to figure out how much market share this pen company is going to have in the future. Then the next is the most important step. It will be selection of appropriate pricing price objective, which means appropriate price objective will be selected by the firm, and then finally the product will be distribution policy will be discussed, and finally the end point, that will be the selection of the price. So these are the steps or the process of price determination. So one by one we'll be considering all these points. Process of price determination. In the first step, the demand forecasting of the product, the demand forecasting is the first step in price determination process. As I have already told you, the process is more complicated in case of new products comparatively. It can be done using different methods of demand forecasting. So as we have already taken the example, you can take example of a pen producing firm. The firm will be first trying to forecast the demand for that specific goods. So the first step is demand forecasting of the product. The second is evaluating the competition in the market, which means the next step is critically evaluating the competitors' activities or the people who are in direct competition with that specific firm and their pricing policy, which means you need to also have a look on their pricing policy. Through this way out, the firm will be in a position to handle the present and future competition, which means if you are able to analyze and understand your competitors' features as well as their pricing policy, you will be in a better position to handle the current issues as well as the future issues. So the second point was evaluating the competition in the market. The next is assessment of expected market share. The third step is to assess the part of market share with which the firm is expected to hold in the future, which means in the future how much market share that specific company or firm is going to hold. In the process of determination of market share, issues such as plant capacity, competitors' policy, etc. should be considered. So how much market share that specific product is going to hold is very involved in the process. The fourth point is about selection of appropriate price objective. There are different objectives of price determination such as increase in market share, stability in price, etc. So the firm shall consider their objective and then accordingly price should be determined in line with the objectives, which means pricing should be done in such a manner as per the price objective the firm should be determining the final price. The objective is the center point around which the whole process revolves. So price objective should be considered while deciding the price. Next is distribution policy. The distribution policy or the intermediaries involved should be properly evaluated. Considering them, the price determination should be done, which means the people who are involved in the distribution process should be taken care of, and considering them, the final price determination should be done. And finally, the selection of the price should be done. Different ways and models of price are evaluated, and management finally selects the best price model by eliminating different alternatives and choosing the best one among the available options, which means the organization, keeping in mind the objectives, should be opting for the best price model for the firm. The price of the product should be optimum one or the best one for the firm as well as the customer, which means the price, the selection of the price model should be in such a way that it should be covering the objectives of the firm as well as the objectives of the customer or the consumer. So as you are able to see, we have discussed all the points of process of price determination. The first was demand forecasting of the product. The second, we discussed about evaluating the competitors or competition in the market. The third I discussed with you was assessment of market share, which the firm is holding, which the firm is going to hold in the future. Fourth, we discussed about appropriate price objective, which means the objective or price objective should be in line with the price policy. Next, we discussed about the distribution policy, which means about the intermediaries, and finally we decided about we talked about the selection of the final price. So this was all about the process of price determination. So in this lecture, I already told you that we have discussed about these two topics, which were factors affecting price policy and process of price determination. In the factors, I told you about alignment with firm's objective, assessment of competitive situation, understanding price sensitivity, harmonizing product and promotional policies, managing manufacturer middleman conflicts, influence of non-business groups on pricing, routine and standardization of pricing. I discussed all these key points with you. The factors I discussed with you in this, and then I discussed with you the process of price determination, in which I discussed the demand forecasting, evaluating the competition, assessment of expected market share, selection of appropriate price objective, distribution policy I discussed, and finally I discussed with you the selection of the price. So this was the process of price determination. So that's all for this session. In this session, I tried to provide you a gist about the pricing policy, its relevance, factors, and the process. I hope it will be of importance for the learners, and the learners will be working in a positive direction for their firm. Thank you, learners, for patiently listening to this session. Thank you.